To this now, the trial of an alleged child offender at Mbilwi Secondary School in Sibaba has been postponed to the 28th of October in the Thohoyandou Children's Court in Limpopo. The defense lawyer indicated to the court that he intends to make an application for the accused to be tried as a minor according to the Child Justice Act, as the offence happened while she was still a minor. Now, the accused has since turned 18. She was depicted in a video that went viral 3 years ago, allegedly assaulting a fellow learner outside the school. The victim, Lufuno Mavhunga, later committed suicide by overdosing on pills. To unpack this, let's now welcome Terry Oakley-Smith. She's the founder and CEO of Diversi-T. Thank you so much, Terry, for your time this afternoon. Now, of course, this story is just but one of the many cases that show just how deep-rooted and violent bullying can be, and in some cases can tragically result in suicide, as in this case. I mean, just talk to us about, what you think the main risk factors are, essentially, that contribute to suicidal ideation in your experience, where perhaps many schools are missing that important part.
I think that in many ways, this incident goes beyond bullying and becomes a case of physical violence. I mean, bullying is usually consists of incidents where harm is done verbally or in other ways through taunting, etc. But what happened at this school on this occasion seems to me to be very, very extreme. And it embraces a whole range of issues. One wonders, where were the teachers while this was going on? It's said to have been just outside the school, but there must have been teachers coming and going. What about fellow pupils, even parents and community members who may have been fetching their own children? It's almost as if this terrible attack was almost commonplace on that particular day. And it's so interesting that it's some 3 years later that this poor young girl, Lufuno, took her own life. I think people have very little idea of the terrible psychological damage that being continually bullied does. Yeah. And that suggests, of course, that, it starts in the home, obviously. Yeah. I mean, it's possible that the perpetrator in this case, who's going to court tomorrow if it's not postponed, was bullied herself. She may have been subject to violence in the home or in the neighborhood.
Mm. And I mean, Terry, I'm not sure
if you look at the case very carefully.
All right, I'm sorry, we lost you a little bit there for a moment. What do you then make, Terry, of the suggestion by the defense lawyer that, he intends to make this application for the accused to be tried as a minor, given the fact that the Child Justice Act would allow, because at the time of the incident, the individual was still a minor. But just to your point, we've seen how even minors have caused such great harm, where in fact it has led to suicide, a suicide at the end of that victimization.
Yes, and I'm not a lawyer, so it's difficult for me to comment on the legal side as to whether she should be tried as a minor or as an adult. But clearly the damage done has lasted long beyond her minor status. Yeah. And one wonders, where parents are in all of this. When a child goes home and has been continually slapped, she's obviously in pain still, and the marks are obviously still there. Was it reported to the school? What did the school do? What is the school doing now? Do they have a policy on bullying? Do teachers talk to learners about bullying? Do learners who are leaders in that school take the opportunity to talk to each other about bullying? Because otherwise it becomes a terrible plague that continues and can, as in this very sad case, last in a young person taking her own life, which is extremely sad.
I mean, when you look at pieces of legislature in this country, we've got about 3 that essentially protect children. But we haven't seen in the recent years, them being, taking effect, if it were. I remember not too long ago, I think the Department of Education even suggesting to some point that parents should at least be also held accountable in cases such as this. I mean, we're already seeing it in the States where it relates to gun ownership. Of course, it's a different story. But what would that then essentially mean, holding parents accountable? Do you think it will be some form of a prevention intervention?
I think there should be some, I agree that there should be some parental accountability. And I was also reading of another incident at the same school where in the hostels where some pupils were burning other pupils with irons. So it sounds to me as if the whole ethos or culture, if I can put it that way, in that school is extremely damaging. And you see, it wouldn't just be, obviously she was the very worst affected, Lufuno, who took her own life, but other pupils who were witnesses to this, who then saw her later, would also have been affected, because bullying doesn't just affect the person who's being bullied, it affects the bully as well. Yeah. And it may well turn out that she herself was bullied. It affects people who are bystanders, who often don't know what to do, who don't know how to intervene. I mean, it's extraordinary to me that nobody saw fit to intervene. So I think it needs a proper broad-based approach to it. And in terms of the young woman going to court with her mother, who you say is her guardian, I think whether the mother can be tried or not, probably not. I think she should still be made aware of her responsibility as a parent, that a child would do this. Yeah. Where has she seen this kind of behavior?
I mean, you've worked with numerous schools on various topics, including racism and so forth. But in the case of bullying, I mean, what do you think are the most effective interventions to deal with these cases at schools, especially when you consider that, like this case, in many of these cases, we're dealing with children here. But we are seeing more and more schools, dealing with this kind of behavior. We saw recently in the Western Cape where children, were sold in a makeshift auction, yes. Akin to slavery times, and those children being accused of being slapped on the wrist by being given community service as an example. I mean, anything could have happened to those children that were bullied. We could be speaking about this similar case. So what interventions then do you think should be most effective here?
Well, I think, first of all, the Department of Education should have a very clear policy on bullying, which all schools, whether public or private, need to adhere to, with a clear explanation of what needs to be done. In a case like this, what's the first thing that needs to be done? What needs to be done to the victim? How should the bystanders be dealt with? If there were teachers that were supposed to be on duty, and that's what worried me so much about that Western Cape case of the children being caged and sold as slaves, I wondered to myself, where on earth were the teachers? Yeah. Where were the adults? They should have been the first people to intervene and prevent this. So bullying affects it. There should be something about the victim, the perpetrator, other learners. Teachers should know what to do. Part of teacher training should look at these kind of emotional incidents. Yeah. How does one deal with a bully in one's classroom? What's the effective thing to do? And then, of course, school principals need to know as well, and they need to know how to act and how to react. Doing nothing is not going to solve the problem.
Absolutely, especially in schools where this has been a repeated case, as in this particular school. But Terry, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Terry Oakley-Smith is the founder and CEO of Diversi-T. Of course, when we come back, we'll give you an update then in terms of the fire that took place at a complex in Midrand, north of Johannesburg, in which one person was killed.